Part land, part ocean, estuaries are unique coastal features. Sheltered bodies of water where fresh water from the land meets and mixes with salt water from the sea. In this challenging environment, partly enclosed by land but open to the sea and inundated twice daily by tides, there have evolved specialised plants, animals, and microorganisms. With a rich supply of sediments and nutrients from land and sea, these estuarine wetlands form what is now recognised as one of the most productive ecosystems on Earth, sometimes producing as much biomass, or living material, per square metre as a tropical rainforest. They are also one of the world's most valuable carbon sinks, absorbing carbon from the atmosphere to make plant matter and then burying or sequestering much of it in mud layers, doing this up to 50 times faster than our forests on land and for much longer storage periods. In brief, estuaries provide a sheltered habitat, a feeding and breeding ground for numerous fish and bird species, and a temporary haven for migrating birds, a filter for water, draining from land and carrying sediments, nutrients and pollutants into the estuary, protection from the coast, from wave erosion and flooding, a very efficient producer of plants and animals, including shellfish and invertebrates, and a highly effective carbon sink. In New Zealand, early Maori settlers prized and protected estuaries as taonga or treasure, as sheltered and safe mahinga kai, for gathering food such as shellfish, fish, eel, birds and even more. Estuaries also provided plants for weaving and dyeing and for rongoa, traditional healing. They provided fertile floodplains for crops and gave easy access to land upriver for timber. Many kainga, villages, and urupa, burial sites, were established beside them, with pa sites on the surrounding forested hills. Estuaries were valued as spiritual and cultural sites. Early European settlers were also attracted to estuaries as natural harbours, and most New Zealand towns and cities developed around them. Sadly, the estuaries were largely misunderstood and mistreated, generally considered unproductive, and often reclaimed for development, farming, dumps and sewage outlets. In this video, we will look at estuaries in their natural state, how they were formed, how they function, and the natural processes at work. New Zealand has over 300 estuaries, varying in size and form, and we may know them as harbours and inlets, river mouths, tidal mudflats, salt marshes, or mangrove swamps. Most New Zealand estuaries were formed between 15,000 and 6,000 years ago, after the end of the last ice age, when the rising sea level flooded lowland river valleys and coastal plains. Or, more recently, by sediments forming spits or boulder banks, enclosing shallow lagoons on land. As shallow basins, they gradually and continuously fill with sediment from both ends. Rivers deliver mud and other sediments eroded from the land. Tides deliver sand and material from the ocean. And both rivers and tides bring with them the many nutrients which support the abundant wildlife of the estuary. Where the two waters meet, the sediments settle out and form wide tidal flats. These may look barren, but in fact are actually teeming with plant and animal life. In the surface layer, and in the water above it, millions of microorganisms, including bacteria, fungi and algae, are hard at work, decomposing or breaking down into simpler forms the material that is carried in with the sediment. This material carried into the estuary naturally includes plant waste, but now also includes many human-introduced nutrients and pollutants, such as fertiliser, herbicides, rubbering chemicals from road runoff, and other industrial and urban products. Plant-like microbes called phytoplankton are also busy producing food by photosynthesis, just as larger plants do. Tunnelling vigorously through the surface sediment in search of this plant food are dense colonies of invertebrates. Marine worms, snails, shellfish, crabs and shrimps. Some New Zealand estuaries have been found to have 500 mud snails and 2,500 cockles per square metre. And at the large Pāotahanui estuary, over 500 million cockles were recorded in 1 square kilometre. These creatures in turn become food for fish and wading birds in the estuary. The fish are mostly the juvenile forms of marine species, such as snapper, flounder, kawai, trevally, red cod, and shark. Or of freshwater species such as eels and whitebait. The birds are either permanent residents, gulls, terns, kingfishers, and royal spoonbills, or temporary residents visiting to enjoy the sheltered environment, such as oyster catchers, herons, pied stilts, and dotterels. Our long-haul travellers, the godwits, migrate 11,000 kilometres non-stop each year from Alaska and Siberia to summer over in New Zealand estuaries. At the margins and shallow edges of these tidal flats grow a few specialised plants that can survive the salt tides and continuous sediment of this habitat. Seagrass, a very important estuarine flowering plant, forms extensive meadows at low tide and below. The long grassy leaves are a perfect nursery for young fish. And the stems and creeping roots form a firm mat in the soft mud, trapping and stabilising the sediment. Near a high tide, dense creeping mats of glasswort often colonise the tidal flats. Another very important estuarine plant, found only in the northern North Island, is the mangrove or manawa, a very productive plant, quick growing and forming large intertidal forests on mudflats. Their unique shallow root systems intertwine, slowing water flow and trapping sediment, providing important flood, storm and erosion control. They constitute a whole ecosystem of their own, providing food and shelter for a wide range of animals. On higher, drier ground at the estuary margins, but still visited by tides, are the salt marshes, areas of densely packed rushes and sedges. Sea rush, jointed wire rush or oi, ropehaw, sea sedge and three square. These plants, the kidneys of the estuary, are responsible for most of the filtering and trapping of sediment and contaminants. They absorb the nutrients and produce food for animals. Growing up to 1 metre tall or more, salt marshes provide a perfect habitat for native wetland birds, such as the pūkeko and the banded rail. Above normal high tides, shrubs such as saltmarsh ribbonwood, manuka, harakeke or flax, taupata, tohinu, and tikoka, cabbage trees, start to appear. Looking at the estuary as a whole, it is clear that, with its continuous and plentiful supply of nutrients from land and from sea, and with its specialised microbes, plants and animals all playing their part to absorb and produce, this environment is certainly one of the most productive in the world. And because much of the vegetation produced is uneaten and unharvested, and ends up being buried within sediment, the estuary also earns its title of most highly efficient carbon sink. This blue carbon, as it is called, can potentially remain sequestered for millennia, buried safely under layers of sediment, and with more added with each new layer. Unlike a mature forest system where much of the carbon is released when the trees are burnt or die and decompose. Let's look again at the benefits that estuaries provide. A sheltered and fertile habitat for many fish and bird species. At least 30 species of commercial fish use estuaries for feeding, breeding and as nurseries. A natural filter for runoff from land. The sediment, nutrients and pollutants are trapped, decomposed and then either used as food or buried in layers of sediment. This results in cleaner and clearer coastal water. They provide a buffer between land and sea, dampening wave action and absorbing floodwater, and are an efficient and long-term carbon sink, absorbing carbon from the atmosphere by plant growth and then sequestering it in sediment layers. The benefits to our human society are food production, clean water, coastal protection, and carbon storage. In addition, humans have used estuaries as natural harbours, as urban sites, for recreation, for fishing and shellfish gathering, for natural character and beauty, and for their cultural and spiritual importance. As stated earlier, Māori have always valued estuaries, and there is now a growing awareness of the many benefits and the huge importance of these unique features of our coast. Since 1991, local authorities in New Zealand have been required to manage estuaries in a sustainable manner and to respect Māori cultural and spiritual values.